One of the least likely humans ever put behind bars for taking countless lives would have to be Dorothea Puente. Since the concept of law enforcement has existed, police have been trying to profile criminals and figure out what is it that leads them to commit crimes. The more serious the crime, the more intense this sort of research can be, with the study of serial killers a key interest of any budding criminologist. However, the truth is that it's virtually impossible to predict the type of person who could actually be driven to murder, as history has terrifyingly taught us time and time again. Profilers have compiled a list of characteristics they find common among psychopaths, but a shocking number of people have come along and completely shattered these expectations. Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be looking at the most evil granny in history. Yeah, you heard it right. So, let's start our video. Upon first glance, Puente looked like an average everyday grandmother. However, a deeper inspection would reveal that she herself would never know if that was the case, having given away all her own children in one way or another before they became adults. Amazingly, this poor treatment of her children was far from the worst thing she did in her life, as Puente is also suspected of having murdered up to 15 people and was convicted of killing at least 3. As is the case with most serial killers, the story of how Dorothea Puente became a killer is widely complicated and more or less begins with her difficult childhood. Not that this excuses any of her crimes in the slightest, as a poor upbringing alone hardly explains how she committed the deeds that she did throughout the 1980s, nor the lesser crime sprees that she went on before her murderous instincts shone through. She was a former prostitute who owned brothels. Without parents, family, or any sort of support system, Dorothea didn't have many options in life. This is most likely the reason her life of crime began while she was so young, when she was only 16 years old and became a prostitute. She met her first husband working at a cat house, but almost immediately lost interest in him and continued her life in the red light district. Unsurprisingly, this eventually led to him leaving her, which may have triggered her crimes intensifying. During this time, she also became an alcoholic, and her lies expanded from revisionist history about her childhood to extravagant tall tales about meeting movie stars and being in Asia during World War II, claiming to survive both the bombing of Hiroshima and the Bataan Death March. Before long, the sex work escalated from being a mere hooker to owning her own brothel, though she kept on prostituting herself along with her clients as well. One has to imagine that if Puente acted like she did while a prostitute, when she committed her more serious crimes, the whole granny nickname would feel way less appropriate. She was arrested dozens of times before the killing started. Given the antics this video has already covered, it should be of no surprise that Dorothea Puente spent much of her life in and out of jail even before the killings began. Most prostitutes who get started as teenagers will eventually wind up behind bars once or twice, and that was the case with Dorothea like any other. However, the first time she was sent to jail was actually unrelated to her sex work and instead would predict the MO that she would later develop as a serial killer. Driven by money and a desire for social status, Dorothea's initial conviction was related to forging checks. Her sentence, 6 months in jail, combining her love of prostitution and making money. She graduated to owning a brothel, as previously mentioned, though we left out the fact that it led to another arrest in 1960. Almost immediately after her release, a third arrest for vagrancy came next, and several more fraud charges came afterward. Amazingly, judges were always very lenient on her, offering short sentences or probation or demanding that she stop handling government checks. 8 bodies were found in her backyard. In the end, Dorothea Puente's downfall was the same practice she used to find her victims. Because she focused on the elderly and enfeebled, Dorothea needed her victims to come to her lest she raised suspicion, and that meant advertising herself to social workers as the best possible landlord for disturbed or older clients. What she failed to realize is that the same social workers care deeply about their clients, like Judy Moyes did about Alvaro Bert Montoya. Once Montoya disappeared, Moyes became deeply concerned, launching a private investigation that very quickly made her call the police. After just one visit, where they spoke to a single other tenant, officers realized something seriously fishy was going on, and with Dorothea's permission, they began digging her backyard. Dorothea stood and watched as the first body was found, reacting with possibly genuine horror by letting out an audible gasp and covering her mouth. Sure, she had to know what the police were going to find, but the terror of being caught may have well been genuine. By the time police dug up 7 more victims, she was already gone. She immediately fled from police when suspicions arose. Not every police officer is entirely prepared for a serious investigation. let alone one of a serial killer. Officer Richard Ewing definitely wasn't expecting a routine missing persons report to turn into a potential murder case, and that's why he called in Detective Sergeant John Cabrera for help. In turn, Cabrera asked Detective Terry Brown and parole agent James Wilson to come along for the journey when they started digging Dorothea Puente's backyard. Defying all logic, and despite all of these dedicated law enforcement officers being on board, not a single one of them made any effort at stopping Puente when she asked if she could go to a coffee shop around the corner to calm down while digging continued. In fact, Cabrera escorted her off the scene, apparently never believing an elderly-looking woman like her could have possibly committed those crimes. Once more bodies were found, the officers almost instantly noticed their mistake, but when they went to find this coffee shop, nothing was found. She was spotted right away trying to commit another crime. Now on the lam, Dorothea instantly did the one thing she knew how to do at that point, which was tricking the elderly into giving her money. Somehow making it all the way from Sacramento to Los Angeles with little money or supplies, Puente walked into a bar, sat next to an elderly patron named Charles Wilgus, and began telling her infamous lies. Calling herself Donna Johansson, she claimed that her husband had just died, causing her to fall on some hard times. Within minutes, Puente was telling him about how he could increase the benefits on his pension checks, and soon, she suggested they have Thanksgiving dinner together. The flaw in her plan was that Wilgus had seen a news report earlier that day, which gave rise to his suspicions, and after a call to a television station, he was almost certain that Donna Johansson was Dorothea Puente. The police were informed and sent to the hotel room, where she told Wilgus to reach her and where they arrested Puente without incident. And that's all for today's video. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section down below. I hope that you found this video interesting, and if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing to my channel. See you in the following video with some more of the latest updates, and until then, stay tuned.